Hi, everyone. I'm just bringing you a short introduction to the interview that you're going to watch after this. We just got into a standard conversation, and I didn't actually do a proper introduction. We just talked personally because we know each other, and then just started talking. So I'm here with this is done back in early February before I took my break, and so I'm putting it up for you guys now. I'm with Bart Marshall again, who many of you know. I've already done two or three really interesting conversations with him up to this point. I'm added today we also added Norio Kushi, who wrote Asleep at the Wheel, and very kind man. Really, really like his presentation as well. So we thought it'd be interesting for the three of us to get together and talk. You'll notice I don't say very much in this conversation. This was more to let them share their opinions, their views, their ideas, which is important. It's important to hear different viewpoints, different ideas. That doesn't mean I agree with everything. And some of you may say, well, why didn't you press this or why didn't you ask that? It's because this is for them to share their viewpoint and their understanding and their knowledge. And that's what this is for. And so I wanted to bring both of them to you again here today. Yeah, that's what's coming up. I put the video quality down a tad because it's a long interview, just for the standpoint of because of where I live out away from a city, just to help with the uploading of something this long to these platforms. So, but the most important thing is the audio quality, of course. As long as you hear us all very well, that's what's most important. The video quality is not as important. So there you go. Bart and Nori will be doing most of the talking coming up, and yeah, see you soon.
Good. So, what's just for both? What's your sense of where things are? Let's just say globally. I know it's a lot bigger than globe. What we're talking about, but where things are right now, and you know, what's the year going to look like? What's the rest of this year going to look like? I know we've been kind of feeling like the other shoes are going to drop for a long time, and then these little shoes, they're not little shoes, but
Yeah,
they are
yeah,
sort of a taste of it. But we know that the agenda is still going full tilt boogie. However, I sense, and I don't keep up with the news at all. I completely stopped. I maxed out on, okay, I get it. I know what's going on. I don't want to hear about every little detail of yet another example of what they're up to. But there's a creeping feeling that I've been getting that there is, some significant pushback in the world, and that the bad guys aren't having everything their own way necessarily. But they got all the power, they got all the weapons, they got all everything, and they can, blow through whatever resistance there is. But I am sort of sensing that there is greater resistance, both on an individual level of people who have gotten fed up and are doing things, and that there may, be a white hat military operation going on that's causing some things to happen. What's your guys' sense of that?
Nori, go first.
Uh, I hadn't really considered that. I mean, I think definitely more and more people are waking up to the agenda that's going on. And there's some organization. I mean, like for example, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Like he's doing some really good work, though he buys into some of this stuff, which I don't. But as far as what he recognizes that there's something happening, it's just threatening the whole existence of the U.S. and humanity. So he's working again for fighting that. And as far as white hat military, I hadn't considered that. Other than that, any military is made up of humans who, if they have a conscience and understand what's going on, maybe they would know who to listen to, or would want to listen to.
Mm. You know, I've got a totally different viewpoint now than probably everyone. And mine is that this reality that we've known, or this simulation, is ending. Like it's going to end. And there, what's going on from the controller side has nothing to do with this reality. It has to do with setting up the minds and the souls of those that they're going to put into the next reality. They've already got it set up, and they've got all kind of different ways to push, whether we're dead or alive, to push the souls into this new, even bigger energetic trap. So in one sense, I think all of this, what you might say, pushing back and pushing against the system, it's pushing against the system trying to fix our world, or it's all about, so in a sense, they're winning either way, because they're winning because they're going to set up the next realm, or they're winning because the people are putting so much energy and focus to fix this little material box, that they're not seeing that this box is going to be gone. And you need to either be preparing for, well, you can't prepare for the next box, because the next box you definitely don't want that. So it's just to leave. That this is the possibility of like the great migration, the great escape, this is the possibility when like millions of souls could just end this right now. And I get the sense that's where we're at. That's really what's going on, is this, our souls en masse going to see that there's no future here, and that the future is somewhere else, home, where we really come from, what we really are? Or are they going to, one way or another, be either trapped in the material further by trying to fix it, or are they going to be trapped in the next realm thinking it's the new safe place to be? So it's like they're creating I feel they're completing two completely different roadways, in which they win both of them. And the third roadway, right, the way that's none of them, which I guess is backwards, as Rose would say, right, going backwards through the TV cable. That's I guess the way home. That's what I'm seeing anyway. What about you, Bart?
Yeah, I very much agree that this simulation, if we want to call it that, or what, I mean, it's the end of Kali Yuga. I mean, the cycle is finishing up. I mean, it's over. That's been preordained, so to speak. This is not tweakable. It's not fixable. It's interesting to watch the drama and the narrative unfold of this end game. I think speaking for myself, I feel very privileged to be alive to watch this drama unfold. After a lifetime of sort of, living in the sweet spot of, American empire and that sort of thing, and having all the goodies, to still be alive to watch it all fall apart, it's a fascinating movie. But it's preordained that it is going to fall apart. It's not fixable. Yet there's a lot of pushback, and there'll be, everybody's not just laying over and playing dead. So it makes it more interesting during the end game here. But I think the imperative for everyone, and there's a relatively few who can answer the call. The imperative is to, lay up your treasures elsewhere. That it's the imperative is the soul journey, the soul evolution, ascension, whatever you want to call it, to not only discover truth, but become truth, and be impervious to what happens to the simulation, because that is no longer, you no longer have an attachment to that false sense of home within the simulation. And to let go, to completely let go, and be prepared to leave. And there is all sorts of, in the Bible and lots of places talk about, the separation of the sheep from the goats and the wheat from the chaff, and the harvest and all that sort of thing. And it's I think that's going on. There's obviously the vast majority of the people alive, are not going to make any kind of transition whatsoever, and the rest of us are being given the opportunity to kind of step up in an accelerated environment of a quickening for our true purpose here. And so that's a great gift that's the gift of all this travail that we're being put through, is that it's allowing us to, if we choose to accept the mission, quicken and accelerate our true journey.
I've got a question for Norio based on what Bart just said. Given that, for example, Nori, I mean, you're going through a great physical challenge. You've had to deal with a real physical challenge.
Yes.
And I know your mindset and your the spirit that you are, and linking it to the time that we're in. How are you seeing all that as part of an opportunity for you, rather than how other people might see the physical challenge as just like some sort of curse, that there's an opportunity here for you personally? How have you, because I know you have that in your being, and I think that's something really interesting to hear about.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, definitely I can tell you at times it's incredibly painful, and this morning I had a really hard time getting up again because of these treatments. It's completely. I'm just completely curious about this whole thing. So, it's not something that I had ever. It's not something I guess anyone would ever expect. And my parents' background is about health and well-being, and like my mother opened the first natural food store in the U.S. And she's the one who actually started using the word organic. And the very first store to use organic as a category. Started pushing that organic. So my prior life until recently, I virtually was never sick. Never had a headache in my life. Last time I had a stomach ache was in August 72. So I've been virtually pain-free my entire life. Now it's kind of a contrast, an interesting contrast to that. The other thing is that regardless, I see this as an opportunity for everybody. What's going on for the whole all of humanity. One of the things that I saw back in 2005, which is what has propelled me to want to share ideas, is that we don't know what we are. We're completely clueless as to what we are as humans. Totally clueless. And instead, when we're a child, we're given an identity and we're told that's what we are. And then we live the rest of our life proving that this concept is what we are. And this concept doesn't really exist. It only exists as an idea. I can talk about a pink elephant sitting in my living room. It doesn't mean that it's there. It's an idea. Well, and everything we think we are is also just an idea. Like that. So, and how we are convinced, or not even convinced, when we don't question as a small child to accept this, is the child begins to accept this. He's not born that way. He or she is not born that way. They begin to accept it through language. Once they begin speaking, they're programmed. Language is programming them into this reality, into this current reality. So, uh, I found that interesting reading Plato's Cave and Allegory recently. And it also states about the child not having been born in the cave, but learns of it, adopts it later. And it's in the speaking, in the languaging that we adopt that. Languaging actually creates our reality, our language.
Bart, you want to jump in?
It's hard to know where to pick up on any of it. I mean, we have, as I don't have an ongoing issue like Norio does, but at my age, I a big part of my, let's just say, worldview is death and beyond, rather than the material world. I mean, I'm enjoying the material world. I happen to be in a very sweet spot in life and all that sort of thing. But a majority of my thinking and being is oriented more towards what comes next. And not so much that you can prepare for it, because I don't, if you think you're preparing for it, you're creating a scenario that is your preferred scenario or something. There's no way to like get yourself ready other than to be completely open and surrendered to whatever happens, whatever is. And more and more, I mean, I stay in constant contact with the higher power as I see it. I use the word the divine a lot, and I'm not afraid of the word God. I'm in constant conversation about now and hereafter and everything, and just getting more and more acclimated to the transition. Like earlier in our conversations, someone was talking about, it's all the same thing. It's not life and death as separate things. It's just all of a piece. There is no difference, and there is, absolutely nothing to fear about any kind of a transition. And it's just the next thing. There'll be a scene change in the movie. And it'll be whatever it's going to be. But I have absolute faith and trust that it is. I've always felt my entire life, and would continue to feel that feeling will continue, that the universe, the divine, God has my best interest at heart, and that it's going to be just more of. I'll call it a story, because it's really still going to be, there's still going to be story and drama and narrative that takes place, after this body gives it up. But there's absolutely, it's not the same, but it's the same. I feel like it's always been a part of my life. The non-life, the afterlife, death. I hate to even call it death, because it makes it sound like there's some sort of a finality or a Rubicon to cross. That it's all, it's always been a part of who I am. It's always been a part of who I am to not be who I am. and that I'm not attached to the world, to the simulation, to the identity. And if there is such a way to prepare for what happens after the body gives it up, it's just that, to release all attachment to what is inevitably going to leave.
Nori, like you wanted to jump in.
No, you can go ahead if you want. How to?
I'm in no rush. I can let you guys talk as long as you want.
Yeah. Well, I'm still. I mean, I can definitely relate to what Bart's saying. And would you consider the divine is within all of us anyway, right? Wouldn't you agree with that, Bart?
I would use a different phraseology. The divine is all of us. It's not within us. There is nothing but God. There is nothing but the divine. We are in it. It is not in us. We are woven of the same insubstantiality as everything else. It's in the manifest universe. There is no substantiality to any of it. It is woven of particles of God, which is totally insubstantial, has no substance whatsoever. We are God. There is nothing else. There is no way to be anything but God. And so it's not so much that it's in us, that we're a separate container that has sparks of the divine in us. We are the divine. We are the entirety of it, totality, the entirety of it. And so, it's even bigger than having it within us. We are within it, to put it a different way. But we're not even in it. We are it.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. And I sent the onion map, the human onion map, and I put in the infinite and the heart in the middle, but really the whole map is that too. It's not every layer of the map is that as well.
Yeah.
What was that part?
I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was interrupting you. Do you want to finish your thought?
Well, I'm still very much focused in this simulation, this current simulation.
Yeah.
And and I like, and basically what I see is that most of what we think is real in this world is not 90%. At least 90% is not real. And for some people, it's more than 90%. So I think so what I see is I agree with what you were saying, Bart, earlier. And the way to prepare, like you said, there's no way you can really prepare because there's no way of knowing beyond our capacity of seeing. And so there's no way of knowing so preparing isn't the right word. However, I feel like waking up to what our true nature is and not being caught up in this play, waking up from this play and not being attached to this character that we're playing, and is preparing for the whatever is beyond death. I feel like what keeps one of the things about this reality, because this me is only a linguistic distinction, a pronoun. Me, I is only a pronoun. Norio is only a noun, a proper noun. And nouns only exist in speaking. They don't exist at all anywhere else except in speaking. The only way that we then convinced that's what we are, the only way we go through life, the way we go through life is through attachment. Okay, this is mine. This is what I do. This is my job. And this is my belief, and etc. And the strongest thing that continually supports this me is inherently antagonistic once we adopt that identity. So it's so we go through life like with a sword and shield, ready to do battle and defend ourselves against the next enemy or whatever, So, and so there's I mean, when the scamdemic started, I thought, oh my God, this is great. I was really excited. But I thought it would be so obvious to people, to everyone, that it's a scam. And I'm driving my truck around, all over the country. I get to California and I go across the street to where I stay, and I to this Japanese restaurant and they're closed. It's like, wait a minute, what the hell's going on? They actually believe this. Whatever. Anyway. Yeah. I didn't realize. I didn't expect people to be that asleep, including family members and all. And the irony is that people don't understand fear. And anytime fear shows up, all that means is you don't see what's going on. You don't understand what's happening. Fear is never created by anything out there. So if fear shows up, then it's an opportunity to wake up to what's really happening.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I was just going to say briefly, and then you guys can jump back in. It was, I write as notes that you guys go along. Going back to some of Nori's comments he made earlier about words and language, and it's right in the language. We're spelling. We're creating a spell, a magic spell with the words. We're creating sentences, which are, things that are legal proclamations every time we speak, and we sort of forget that the language is built in such ways. I saw this, and Nori was talking about the formation of language in a young child being a key marker point to the I guess the sinking into the matrix, I guess is the way of describing it, right? And that was story I told before, but it's that I was with a 3 or 4 year old girl and her parents, and the girl was still seeing herself in the second and the third person. Yeah. So it's like Sally wants a drink. Sally wants to go outside. No, you're Sally. Say I want a drink. Sally wants a drink. And so for her, Sally and whatever was communicating are two completely different things. The physical body and the two different things. And of course the parents kept hammering her. No, you're Sally. Say I want a drink. And of course I wasn't there when the moment finally occurred, but eventually in the upcoming weeks, somewhere she would have finally said, I want a drink. And officially, Sally was now her. And I'm pretty sure we all went through that moment, that each one of us had a particular moment when we finally said that physical person, body, and me are the same thing. And so I'll finish with this and then you guys can jump in. We were talking about language and words, about and people have asked me this in interviews, what are you trying, what do you want to accomplish, or what do you hope people do? What do you hope people, uh, and my word for what I'm hoping happens for myself and others, the word is remembering. That's the word I'm trying to focus on, remember. And of course, that has so many different levels. I don't mean it in a sense the way people normally think of. It's like having a recalled memory. I'm meaning it in a completely different way, going back to a lot of, because the ancient Egyptians used that word a lot in their stories of Osiris. It's all about the rememberment of Osiris. And I think by just for me studying that word, what that word means and what that word means in the ancient mythology is to me a big clue through language as to where our intention needs to be going forward. I'll let you guys just jump in wherever you want.
Yeah, something that you put into how regarding the ancient Egyptians was that you saw that, forget how you put it, but you saw that their way of living, or their way of thinking, or their way of being was one absent of ego. I don't know if you use that word or not, but there's something you had said, and that was exactly what what I'm attempting to share. I call the way in which we speak now today, I call it phantom selfing. We're continually recreating the self, which is not real. Phantom selfing. We're speaking as though that is real. And so I think you I mean, you didn't say that, but I think that's what you were pointing to, that as well.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's so hard. I'll let Bart jump in a minute, but it's so hard now for me to know for sure what the ancient Egyptians were doing or not, because I put so much of my belief structure when I was researching them, but the idea that the ancient Egyptians who are writing the texts are the same people who built the buildings and who built the temples and the statues. And now I've come after so many years to see that what we know as the pharaonic Egyptians, the Old Kingdom Egyptians, they were like archaeologists. They showed up at these places long time after. So the buildings are there, the temples are there, and they're literally a lot of I didn't understand this for a long time, but a lot of the tunnels that are in the pyramids and things, that the ones that are crudely done, they're the ancient Egyptians digging into these things, trying to figure out what they are. They were literally like the way we were thousands of years later, digging into their stuff. They were literally digging into these long forgotten ancient power sources. And so it's also, now I'm starting to realize it's hard to know how much what we have of the ancient Egyptians, because we have language from them, we have released. I'm not even sure how much they knew really. They knew something. They were closer to that time than we were, but how much did they have correct and how much were they mistaken of? I'm really not sure even now myself. It's been like an inner change for myself to let go of sort of having this group on a total pedestal and now kind of saying, well, they're not on the basement either, but I'm not really sure where to, if you were using Rose as Jacob's ladder, I'm not really sure what rung to put them on the ladder, Bart?
Well, yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, of course, it's still just a story and a narrative and everything about history, where we got the totally false history that we've been taught in the programming institutions that we were forced to attend, and then there's what we're calling true history that we were very curious about. The Tartarians and the Egyptians and all the civilizations that have been unceremoniously buried and erased from history by who knows what forces, but it is still fascinating. And the story, the Egyptian story that is most with me, because I've I translated the Emerald Tablets of Thoth and some of the legends, let's say, of Thoth, of the Atlantean, of living and ruling for thousands of years in Atlantis, and then having to flee because of a disaster, and then landing in Kem, in what's now Egypt, and becoming a ruler of Egypt for centuries, and teaching the Egyptians, who were hairy bushmen. They had no intellectual culture or anything like that. And Thoth, actually, taught them to be Egyptians and taught them everything that he knew. He was a scribe and, a writer, and, the emerald tablets are attributed to him and that sort of thing. But certainly that kind of, philosophy and spirituality existed within this, uber race that, transcends, lifetimes, that literally 20,000 years is nothing. And they would use the pyramid, and deep into the pyramids, as regenerative energy sources, to literally go down and lay in a state of suspended animation meditation for 100 years and then come out again, and that's in the literature. And so it's anything but a race of human beings building pyramids, and it's very much a ignorant, primitive people that had technology and spirituality brought to them by a much more advanced race or species, and not just in Egypt, but all over the world. The ancient structures that are rocks that weigh thousands of tons are put together with microscopic seams that could not be made by man. You can't slide a piece of paper between these seams perfectly straight. And then you see the humans that come along after and put very crude rock structures around them. They were already there. And then these very crude structures that very much look like humans built them. It's like a stone wall between farm fields, that we commonly see. It's very rough construction methods right next to and on top of impossibly complex methodology for even building them. We don't have now. We don't have the technology even now to build the pyramids. So there's much more going on than meets the eye, I guess. I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Nori?
When I was a child, I heard versions of history from my parents, which were different than the average person hears about. And one of the things I was taught is that humans have come and gone 5 times on this planet.
Okay.
This is our fifth time humans have come back to planet Earth. That they were wiped out one way or another, four previous times. I spent a number of years ago. I spent time with Aztec people in Mexico, and I was invited to participate with them in a solstice ceremony, and at one of the pyramids, Xochicalco. And what I learned from them is that 12,000 years ago, more than 12,000 years ago, they said the moon was brought to the Earth. really interesting. They said that the moon was created somewhere else and then brought to the Earth, and it passed the Earth 4 times, close to the Earth 4 times, each time creating major havoc, upheaval on the planet, on a planetary scale, and then finally settling into the orbit after the 4th time, settling into its current orbit, which also disrupted the calendar. A year was no longer. They said that the year was 360 days prior to the moon coming to the Earth. And so after the moon, with the introduction of the moon, they had to recreate the calendar. And where they recreated the calendar was at this Xochicalco. They said that people from South America, North America, different tribes or sent representatives from all over North America and South America. And they got together and they studied the movement of from Xochicalco. They studied the movement of the stars and the planets for 7 generations, and that was and from that created the quote the Mayan calendar. They call it the Aztec calendar. Same calendar. And so.
Yeah, because I found that as well. Everywhere I looked in the ancient world when I did my research, all the calendars are 360 days, 60 days, the original calendars. And it makes sense that all of our geometry is built on a 360-degree circle, which logically is a dumb number to choose. You would choose 100, you would choose 10, you would,
Right.
the number that the degrees of a circle being 360 is an obvious clue that key element of geometry is linked to something much greater. It wasn't just an arbitrary number. So it makes sense that was the ancient calendar. And we're missing this, because one thing we see about the simulation, because really mathematics and geometry tell us how the simulation is built. And the simulation, as we see in almost all areas, is built to these perfections, whether they be pi, whether they be phi, whether they be this thing, whether they be using this dodecahedron or this. But this planet Earth thing we live on has a 365.25 day orbit, whatever you want to call it, right? Whatever this thing is. That's like the dumbest number in universal geometry. It's obvious an indicator something is wrong. Something is wrong about this place, because here's this perfection of geometry that builds this whole simulation, but here it's wrong. And so it's interesting because the ancients, like you're saying, seem to indicate it was also in complete harmony with the total simulation. And now, at least what we've come to, it's not. And it's interesting to try to determine what was the change that happened, because to me that's also a complete change of the simulation, whether it's a marking of a reset, whether it's a marking of the end of humans and a new humans coming, to me that's a marker point of when the calendar changed, our whole realm changed. Bart, can you jump in?
Well, for better or worse, this leads me into speaking at least briefly about what the scam of a spherical Earth and space, which is not true. And so these are imposed these mathematics have been imposed upon us by entities with an agenda. These are false numbers. As you alluded to, the more natural numbers do exist, but we've had this, had our mathematics and our, understanding of the structure of the universe imposed upon us by people with an agenda, and they are all false numbers. And if you look at them, the speed of the Earth is supposed to be rotated, and the the speed of the Earth around the sun, and all the things that we've been told is what's happening in the speed of the sun around the universe, and everything's spinning and we can't feel a goddamn thing. Of course, we're absolutely still, just like we always have been. But all this has been imposed upon us, and the mathematics has been invented, and it is not accurate. They have things that add up to 666 everywhere. All of their mathematics, you add this and this and this, and it's 666. It's a very agenda-driven description of the universe, and it's false. And it all starts with we're going to impose this narrative that the Earth is spherical, and that it's traveling at these incredible speeds, and they present us with these big whiteboards of mathematical figures as their proof for a spherical Earth and for gravity and all these other things, which is total bullshit. But observation, just general observation, and every scientific experiment that you can do says the Earth is not a sphere, it is a plane, it is flat. And everything that says that it is a sphere and that there is such a thing as space and a vast universe is not provable. It's theory only, and some very questionable mathematics is all they have to support it. And they make us feel stupid by filling blackboards with numbers and formula. It's just not true. So, yeah, the numbers don't add up for a very good reason. They do not correspond with the true nature of our, let's call it the reality, true nature of the simulation, the mathematics of the simulation. They do not correspond with the true mathematics of the simulation.
Right. By the way, because we were just talking about the falseness of the narrative of planets and space and whatever. This is something that fascinates me, Bart, so much, is when I look out the window at night and I can see clouds behind the moon. That is still one of those things that just still, even though I've seen it hundreds of times, there's a cloud, it's going to the moon, but it's not in front of the moon, it's behind it. The cloud is gone, the moon is full, and then the cloud comes out the other side. And that was one of the first things years ago that got me asking, what the hell's really up there?
Yeah. Well, it's nothing like they've told us. The moon and the sun are both local. They're both local to the Earth. We'll call it the Earth, to the firmament. They're local. Yeah. They are not spinning around in space. The moon is not even a sphere, the moon and the Earth, the moon and the sun both have circular orbits around the plane of Earth, not like this. It's just around the plane of Earth, and they're local. You can see clouds behind the sun. As I mentioned earlier, every observation that we can make says the Earth is a closed system and it is a plane. It is flat. And every scientific experiment that you can do says the same thing. It's a plane. It's flat. It's a closed system. The Bible talks about the firmament, and every culture has artistic pictures of the firmament. Like 30 different cultures have the same basic thing. They show the firmament, covering the Earth, the dome that covers the Earth, just like the Bible says. And things like, these theories like gravity. What's called gravity can easily be explained just by density and as a side thing, buoyancy. But dense things fall below less dense things. That's just an observable phenomenon. A lead ball falls through air because it's more dense, and a ping pong ball does not fall through water because it is less dense. It has nothing to do with gravity. Gravity is just a made up theory. You ask any of these people that are bandying the word gravity about with, great scientific, pontifications, well, what is gravity? I don't know. We don't know. We theorize that there's this thing called gravity, but we don't know what it is. Well, it's density. It's density and buoyancy. It's just basic, fundamental physical principles of the simulation. There is nothing that supports a spherical Earth and a vast space of the universe. It just doesn't exist. That's not how the simulation is constructed. But so that's a very, I feel like that's one of the linchpins of the house of cards coming down. If people ever really got that we have been, bullshitted about the most basic thing, the structure of our world, of our reality. And then from then on, everything that comes from that is total bullshit. And just on the level of the simulation, that is, it's staggering. But nobody's, people aren't going to wake up to that. But that's all, to me, that's part of the waking up process. Howdy, you and I have talked about this before, but, something about in these last, let's just say 4 years now, the things that have been happening with all the scams and things that have been coming to light, the imperative to discover ultimate truth and the imperative to discover the relative truth of what's right in our face have come together into the same journey, the same quest.
Right.
That by seeking the truth of the manufactured reality, by seeking the truth of our true history, of the true nature of the reality that we are inhabiting, by seeking the truth about what's going on with the manipulation of the world and the systems of the world, we are at the same time approaching ultimate truth. It is the same path. It's the truth pyramid. So at the bottom, there are these very basic truths. And as we climb the truth pyramid, we get closer and closer to ultimate truth. So it's the same. And that is only a realization or something that we could talk about that's occurred, in my estimation, in the last 4 or 5 years, when we've been presented with such obvious bullshit in our manifest reality that is an invitation to look deeper, 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 higher, higher, higher. Well, if this is untrue, then maybe this is untrue. Maybe this is untrue. And we climb that ladder of truth, that pyramid of truth. And it's an opportunity that hasn't been available 100 years ago. People weren't looking at, well, anyway, I don't need to go there, but it's a relatively recent phenomenon, at least in my estimation, that the path of relative truth and the path of ultimate truth are the same.
Yeah.
Nori?
Yeah, definitely. I think I agree. Yeah, like what I like to share with people is forget about finding truth. One, you probably wouldn't recognize it even if you saw it. That's one. And so what I recommend is always to live truthfully. To always be truthful. Be truthful in speaking and to live truthfully. And then in living life through that space, then truth itself will show up, but not by looking for it. I think that's kind of what that's a different way of looking at what Bart was saying.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should have one more topic of discussion, and then I'll stop the recording part anyway, so you don't have to think about that.
Uh-huh.
Anything you guys feel like needs to come out, needs to be said?
So so much needs to be said, but yeah,
But like you
in
just
order
can't
to
hold
start
it
talking,
back. That it's just like
yeah,
it's like it's
but
pouring out of your head.
no, I don't carry it around like I need to say anything. Is I kind of need to be triggered by it, a conversation starter or something, and then you may not be able to shut me up. But I don't feel the imperative to be evangelical about anything. People are on their own now. Um, for a while I was evangelical about the most basic things because it would save people's lives, the vaccine and things like that. I
Yeah.
would actually try to, teach people or talk to people about,
Right.
that your government and the world, so-called world leaders, do not have your best interests at heart. They are trying to kill you. They want to make you miserable and sick so they can sell you pharma drugs, and then they want you dead because they are very upfront about saying that there's too many people in the world and we need to get rid of a bunch of them. And so then these are the same people that, almost everybody accepts that we need to have these vaccines. We trust them to have things injected in our body. The people that think there's too many people in the world are, in charge of our health. I mean, it's staggering the ignorance that people have to accept in themselves and cover up in themselves in order to accept the narrative that's being fed to everyone. And I think I'm at the point, and reached it a while back, where I said, this is hopeless. People are either going to wake up on their own, or, there's nothing anybody can say to them. They turn the other ear. They can't hear. You can lay out the most lucid description of what's going on and the wool that's being pulled over our eyes, and cross all your T's and dot all your I's, and it's the perfect explanation for why things the way they are. And then they may nod a little bit, and then the next day they'll rush out to be first in line for the next booster. It's like it's an impenetrable wall. You just can't get through to them. So I've stopped trying. So I'm not evangelical about anything. I've never been evangelical, but you needed to be on a path to ultimate truth. If you're already on the path, I'm more than willing to talk and help. But I don't actually recommend that. It's a life-changing thing. And if you're not driven to want to know the truth, the big T truth, I don't recommend you try to make yourself interested in it. It's one of those things that you either have this imperative that you can't live without knowing it or not. But you can get smarter about relative truth and make your life easier and safer, and get yourself out from under the jackboot of the powers that be. And that is something that can be done. So you can learn how to be smarter about things in the world. And every chance I get, I'll talk to people about it, but I'm not in a position where I see many people anymore to talk about it. But so there's this sense that there's I've talked about the arc before, that there's an arc forming and has been forming of people that kind of get it, what's happening, and get red pilled. And when you're red pilled and you understand what's really going on in the world and everything, metaphorically, you have stepped onto the ark. And that inevitably that also leads to spiritual considerations. when you see what's going on in the world, people tend to also open their eyes to spiritual things. A lot of people are turning to the Bible for guidance because we see in the Bible parallels to the situations we find ourselves in now. And a lot of prophecy, of course, in the Bible about end times and lots of other things. And then there's passages in the Bible that talk about how to deal with these periods in life. So people, red-pilled people tend to be more spiritual, and so as I say, these things go together. So I think the opportunity and imperative now is to step onto the ark. And I'm not speculating about what not being on the ark will be like, but as we near the end of Kali Yuga, and people are talking about ascension and the harvest and moving from 3D to 5D, and lots of ways to talk about the next thing, and of course the soul journey and all that sort of thing. That there is just this sense that a massive opportunity is available to us now. Huge. Most people cannot take advantage of it, but for those who can, this is a tremendous opportunity that I can't describe it. I can't do any better than I've just stumbled over right now, but that there is a separation taking place between those who are going to be on the ark and those who are not. What the consequences of that is, I don't know. But I do tend to mention it from time to time.
Yeah, I like the metaphor of the ark, and it's I've been attempting to share these what we're all looking at with other people. It's been almost 20 years, but it's but the fundamental thing that I want to share with people is that their world, 90%, if not more, their world is programmed. It's a programming. And it's continually, and so the way in which we speak is based on that programming. So how we're speaking is continually reinforcing this programming. And also, like, the way one listens is also not neutral, it's programmed as well. The way in which we listen is programmed. So that's the challenge, that any ideas which are contrary to what people think, the way the programming operates is a threat, and when in fact it's obviously not a threat. It doesn't matter what you or I say; it's either true or not, or partial truth. Either way, it's not a threat. Yet, depending on how we speak, people find us threatening, and that's part of the programming. Keep to reinforce the simulation with each other, and like TV, I didn't grow up with any TV, and I didn't realize how that was a good thing. The other thing, my mother, she's told me that always follow my feelings, and she didn't mean emotions. Feelings like intuition, and so So when I was 14, as I'm sitting in class, ninth grade, in English class, I saw, watching the clock, waiting for the class to get over so I can enjoy the April spring day. And all of a sudden hit me that this was all BS. That the whole idea that I'm sitting there being graded, and I'm accepting that as real. I saw how stupid that is of me to even consider that has anything to do with me. So anyway, so I thought, well, I'll finish high school and then that's it. But then the following year, it all of a sudden hit me. Wait a minute. The way the world is, it's kind of messed up. And I saw, wait a minute, this whole educational system is part of the mess. It's creating the mess. I walked out of school, walked home, and I told my mother, I'm finished with school. I'm not going back. And she never asked me a question about it. She trusted my feelings.
I'll leave it on with this note. This is a book I just got recently. It's called Weapons of Mass Instruction. At least the first 3 chapters of this book are outstanding, which is describing in historical detail how the modern, particularly American Western school system was designed, who designed it, why they designed it the way it was, and what the school, which was, the late 1880s to the 1920s, and what school was like before the school system we all grew up in. Highly interesting book because it dictates that, not only is the school system a tool of making people stupid, it's been created to do that. It's not accidental. It's been so a big part of this guy's book is the best thing a student can do is get out on their own as much as possible away from what school's telling them and think for themselves. So that's kind of, I guess I'll end it with this idea, but because Bart was talking about how hard it was to try to get through to other people. So you've stopped, as all of us have pretty much stopped. But one of the most important things that we were supposed to learn as children that we did, somehow we got it through, however, was to critically think, to not just accept whatever's being told to us, to say, well, I want to prove that to myself. I'm going to look into that for myself. I'm going to find an answer for myself. And seemingly the majority of the population now over the last 20 or 30 years has been built in such a way to automatically accept, and we don't even say authority, accept external answers as automatic fact and nothing that they have to think about. If they type in something on Wikipedia and it comes up on Wikipedia, well, that's the answer. I don't think about it anymore. And that, I think, is one of the biggest reasons how from the material world, how we've got to where we are now. That a highly critical thinking, questioning group of people could have never gotten to this stage. Things would have been derailed. Bad word to use where we are right now with Ohio, but we wouldn't be in this place. And so I think maybe that's a point to stop for the people out there. I think this has been such a great conversation, and I just want to thank both Nori and Bart for taking time out of their day to share their story and their knowledge. And I think this is something that probably most of you will want us to do again. And we'll see if Bart and Nori would like to do it again. But I wanted to say thanks for joining us today and sharing with these people.
Thanks for having us, Howdy.
Thank you, Howdy. It's a pleasure and honor.
Thanks. And of course, as you know, Bart has he's done a ton of books, most recently a lot of translations. I think you finally finished your translations of the Bible. That's correct. That's all out now and it's available. Yeah.
Yep.
And Nori
published November on Amazon and elsewhere.
Yeah.
Uh,
we were still planning to do a talk about, because I want to actually talk to Bart about how he did the translation and how he went through that process and what he learned from the process of it. So I think there's a story more than just even the text. It's Bart's own story of translating is a story.
Yeah, I'd be glad to have a conversation anytime.
Yeah. And I know, Nori, you put one out 10 years ago of your journey and from your truck driving life and your experience, right?
Yeah, it's called Awake at the Wheel.
Awake at the Wheel, yeah.
And its subtitle is Norio's Highways Adventures and the Unmasking of the Phantom Self.
Right.
So, and it's actually written by a close friend of mine, Steve Earle. I was writing. Kept telling him I was going to write a book, and he finally said, "I'm writing a book." So he wrote the book for me. He's written. It was I think his fifth book he wrote.
Well, thanks, guys, and we will see if you guys want me to do this again coming up. I would assume in another 30 to 60 days, we'll have a whole mass of stuff in the world to talk about, potentially. So, Bart, Nori, thanks for joining us, and
thank you.
We'll see you guys soon.